They are. Oh.
Okay. First thing on the agenda is to review the agenda tonight, and it's a rather large undertaking, so I'm going to let Carter do that tonight.
Tonight we've got a presentation from Internal Affairs. It'll be Captain Mason, and Cindy Coleman is back up. Police Auditor is presenting their annual report. Mark Disner and Beatrice, I don't remember the last name. Hernandez. Downtown Safety Report, Captain McGann and Julie Smith and Jeff Perry. Chief's Report, and then Sergeant Williams will do the Code of Conduct. So we have a lot of guests and a lot of presentations. And I believe that Marty Wilde's on the phone. Maybe? Was planning that?
I am.
Okay, I'm Marty. We are going to go directly to our public comment. We have one request here. If anyone else would like to make a public comment tonight, please fill out the blue slip on the table where it's put and bring it up here, and we'll get you on the agenda. Otherwise, I'm going to turn the meeting over now. Yeah, Vice Chairman Thompson.
Hello, Charmaine. Yeah, ready? Would you like if you just take a seat at the end of the table and give us 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when you're almost done.
Okay. I just wanted to say I'm really happy with the changes, the downtown, and even along the bike path. Park Block looks really good now. The downtown looks a lot better. Even the library, not so much inside. But you know, I like the dog fans, but now they're all coming back and lying on the sidewalk without their dogs. So I think that should be addressed in some manner. I realize all these things seem to, for some bizarre reason, fall under the First Amendment. I don't get that. But it's a bike path. It's better because I ride my bike and I called in tent and litter like every time I rode for the last couple of years since I moved nearby, and now I'm not really doing that. I'm not seeing that, and when I do, I call it in, and it's usually addressed right away. I called today. I started Friday on my parachute, but so that's better. I would like to see, I know you've orange off there under Third Street on the north side, but if you get those big boulders in, like you have under Washington Jefferson, where it goes over the bike, north side by the hotel there. I just like to see it, keep having it cleaned up. The Roseburn people talked to me today, they're happy. They're not finding people and stolen bikes like they did at the Rose Garden. I just hope you keep going this way. I know you're trying to get things tough for the 21 track event, but I'd like to see it also for really our benefit. And I'd like to see where at some point $250,000 a year doesn't have parks money, doesn't keep having to be wasted cleaning up the needles and feces and tents and trash, and it can actually go for the park. Oh, and plus, I love those ordinances. I actually voted for all of them, and they, I wrote letters, I did emails, I made calls, and I know 6 of the 7 went into effect, and I'm super glad about that because there were days I was so mad and even so sad, and even so frustrated because I would draw every pile and call in and listen more. I don't want to be doing it. I just want to ride my bike and enjoy myself, you know. And it's a beautiful park and a bike path, and that's how it should be. And we pay for it with our property tax. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no one else come forward, we'll continue with the agenda, and the next is Commissioner comments. Well, first I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize and welcome Jennifer to our commission. It's good to have you with us. And we are, normally what we do is go around the table and the commissioners have comments. And you're not required to make any comments, but if you'd like to say, anybody want to start?
Sure, I'll start. So, hey Marty, it's Claire. Hi Chris, we haven't met officially, but I think I voted to appoint you, so that's helpful. So I've been absent from the commission for the better part of a year, and I'm back now, and very pleased to be back and able to participate again. Though I will say this evening I'm going to be a little bit like Jennifer and kind of be like a brand new city councilor because I've been out of the loop for so long. But I plan to be back and a regular attendee and participate like I used to be able to do. So glad to be here. Glad to see new members and returning members too.
Well, we're happy to have you back, Counselor. All of us are very happy to see you. So we're glad that you'll be back and joining us. From the Human Rights Commission, I think I'm excited to announce that I've been elected the chair of the Human Rights Commission for the coming work plan year, so apologies to all of you and to my fellow commissioners. So that was the big thing that came out of our last meeting. We're going to do some work planning on the 1st of August, and I'll be happy to come back and share with you some of the goals that we've set for the coming fiscal year. So that is the big news that came out of HRC.
Well, thank you for welcoming me. I'm really looking forward to being on this commission, so I plan to do all I can, and just let me know. I'm still learning, so you need.
Amazing day outside. Good day.
But it's 2 months for me too. So we had a civilian review board meeting last month, a couple things to share. We had a presentation by Alana Holmes and Christy Hammett regarding the hiring process for the chief. We had a training regarding crisis intervention, CIT training. That was awesome. And then we reviewed an accepted board case, which really was a lot to report out of that. Go ahead, Share.
I'm delighted to have the two of you on board. Since I saw you all last, I participated in an active shooter training for the police department, and I was just delighted with the professionalism and focus of the participants.
I guess the only thing I would have to report is a few Fridays ago I did my ride-along with Officer Green, and it was incredibly worthwhile. And I also did sit-in, so long or whatever, at the 911 call center, and that was illuminating, to say the least. So I would highly recommend anyone who hasn't do that.
Good segue into what I was going to bring up. We don't have a meeting next month, correct?
Correct.
August, we are off. And traditionally, Chairman, as long as I've been on here, has suggested that commissioners take that time to sign up and ride along with an officer so that you can kind of get a first-hand look at how things go. Not in one trip is necessarily representative, but it might be. It could be. So, I want to welcome some people who haven't been in a while, and of course, it is a pleasure. I just want to call attention to it. Claire, we're glad to have you back.
Thank you.
So happy everything's going well.
Thank you.
And I don't have anything else to add, except I did like what the speaker had to say. I'm very pleased with the way things are going downtown. Everything I see is very positive and upbeat, and we're hoping that will continue. And if we can just get the tag to stop tagging, we'll be at 7-7. Okay, so
Marty, just want to ask.
Oh, yes.
oh, Marty, I'm sorry. You're not here physically, so I forgot you. Sorry.
No comment. Thank you.
Okay, great. Worked out good. All right, we have to review and approve the 2017 minutes. I trust the commissioners have had a chance to review them in your packet. Is there any changes that need to be made? Up here, then I'll take a motion to approve. Steve, second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the motion as stated for this, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Aye. Okay.
And I'm going to abstain since I'm not here.
So you can.
You were saying the yes.
Were you
saying
voting
yes, right?
in yes and support, Marty?
Marty?
Oh, no.
Seem like that.
I don't think you can call that.
Or you say, hey,
We have to answer?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the next on our agenda is the Internal Affairs Annual Report. If you folks would like to join us at the table, we'd love to hear from you.
That's the statement I hear to show it on the board, and I realize that I'm not going to have computers with the notes, so it really is going to be reading. Just put all our notes in the PowerPoint for these. And I didn't think I could. Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is Cindy Coleman. She's our IA guru. She knows everything. She shares my backup. So anything I don't know, she knows everything I don't know. Yes, now. Can you guys see it? You're kind of in a sad spot. So just as a preface, Internal Affairs, Larry Constant, Jason Bergman are our IA investigators. Cindy's our management analyst. Whoever who's not here tonight does all of our labor, program coordinator, and Ron is in the back as the professional standards until this time. And I am here as acting captain because Cindy and I created this for 2016 before I took the position. So we're just going to summarize, I hope. It's going to be my team that will do IA investigations, and so we just help provide explanations of what all of this is as we go on as well. Supervisor actions. We've included some data on vehicle crashes and vehicle pursuits, use of force and rest of that. Validation is our favorite, and lessons learned from all of them. So to begin with, our overview of IA stats is a lovely chart that compares 2013 to 2016 here, and you'll see that we have increased significantly since last year. In all categories, we do have the new blue category in 2016 right here. Incident review, which we'll talk about a little later. It was created in 2000 specifically to help us deal with classifiers and complaints only as we saw it. Correct. So first we're going to start off with internal affairs investigations, and not all investigations are the same. So these are allegations of misconduct as well as criminal misconduct. So in 2016, we had a total of 29 internal affairs files, which again are the criminal and misconduct. Specifically, they broke down into these categories, with performance being our significant leader. Sustained complaint rates increased for us a little bit. We have the 2014, 2015, 2016. Just for info, 2014 was the first year we were able to really compile the level of stats because of the implementations in the team. So that's where we began. You can see we were down just a little bit in most categories. Again, a little 29 complaints this last year with 12 total sustained. As we get to look closely at 2016, you can see, I don't like this chart, but we had 18 internal complaints and 11 external. And of those, 11 of those were sustained, whereas 1 external complaint was sustained. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yep.
So, generally speaking, if it's an internal complaint, it's more likely than not to be sustained. positions on the allegations. Again, we had 29, and this was how they were resolved. We had the 12 that were sustained, and all other categories, green one is pending. So this report was compiled in March, and since then some of the 2,000 cases were adjudicated, so we do have that result, but we haven't compiled it. Any questions on this? Further explanation about dismissals or categories? Tell me if I'm going too fast. So, with those 29 allegations of misconduct, there were a total of 65 separate allegations within. So, a single case could have multiple allegations, performance, courtesy, conduct, any of those types of things. So, of the 65 total allegations, we had 24 sustained and unfounded and so forth. I'm happy to see that we really only have 2 of the insufficient evidence like this. I think most everybody in the system likes to have a finding one way or another and not left in one vote.
Not adjudicated due to resignation, 15, but that was for one, right? It was 15 allegations.
I believe it was one. And then we have those.
When I first saw that, whoa! I looked at the chart above, and I'm like, oh, that's probably the same one. Then.
Looks like it is. This one looks sideways, but it's not. It's supposed to be that way. So this is by subclass. So each of the allegations are broken down into use of force, performance, courtesy, constitutional rights, conduct. And so again, you can see 19 allegations of the 65 were performance related. And then we have those 13 that were not adjudicated. Incident reviews. So let's talk a little bit about incident reviews in general. There's new subclass or classification this year, and we don't get confused with it. Right. So we discovered that in working with the police auditor's office, we were wanting to have a category that was sort of in between a full formal IA investigation and a service complaint or policy complaint. There were times where the auditor felt that we needed a little bit more information from their investigation to help them land on a classification. So we came up with a new type of actual investigation. So now we have 3 investigative types. One is the IA formal investigation. The second one is the incident review, and the third one is called supervisor action. Those are less serious cases or citizen complaints that are going to be handled by the first-line supervisor. So these incident reviews are typically assigned to the IA sergeant, and they can include whatever investigation that the auditor or the department feels is required, and can assist the auditor in potentially reclassing the complaint to a formal IA. So we're not going to be closed out as an incident review, and the only thing it precludes is an actual interview with the officer, the named officer of the employee. So we had, I believe, 29 of those this year. So what this means that those 29 incident reviews that were able to remain as incident reviews and weren't reclassed. If they were reclassed to an allegation, they would have shown up in the prior statistics. So technically the incident reviews were closed out with, at that level, meaning there wasn't a need to interview the officer, but the auditor was able to give enough information to close the case without further investigation. And this is just a breakdown of how those look. Again, performance is our #1 category.
And how does the not applicable apply in this lecture?
Yeah. Well, as you know, the auditor is responsible for the intake and classification of all of our complaints, and sometimes some of these incident reviews were not further subclassified. Right. specified, so they were just left with like incident review.
So it's an incident review, just not specified by type.
It wasn't so classified yet.
Supervisor actions.
Again, she mentioned briefly on those sort of minor complaints which may or may not be true. Usually it's an issue of a policy complaint or an understanding of how we as police do our jobs, and employees which are also following in that line. No, I'm good. So this is pretty much probably the bulk of the work society, frankly, because service complaints come in for all kinds of things. 55% of the supervisor actions were service complaints, which were handled by the first line supervisor. So it's usually a conversation with the employee and the complainant to kind of learn the dynamics of what happened, and if coaching was warranted, then that happens, or most oftentimes, almost often. Occasionally, an explanation to the reporting party is sufficient to resolve the issue. Sometimes they're just unhappy with our policies on response to traffic crashes or how we handle camping or any number of issues. And then general inquiries are why. Again, this is a comparison between 2015 and 2016 inquiry consequence service complaints. And Cindy, we're not going to tackle this slide. We have here inquiries were higher, and then we have them swapping in there, which you can explain better. Well, again, these just reflect the auditor's interpretation of the best classification, sub-classification of the complaints coming in through their office. Sometimes they might be on the line of one or another, but this is where they landed. The most important thing I think, to know about this group of complaints is that they typically are assigned to the first line supervisor rather than IA. They will not result in discipline, but there could be a performance issue identified, and the sergeant can coach their employees, and we'll make a note of that. But these generally speaking will be first line supervisor, with an exception. Sometimes policy complaints are assigned to Sergeant Williams in the policy office to handle as well.
It looks like the inquiry policies went down, but then the service went up. Any insight as to why that last year?
Well, I think some of the reasons could be, again, the auditor has an additional incident review that could have impacted the classic work cases of funded as well. So prior to 2016, the auditor was using inquiry a lot. Both he was using inquiry a lot, and either assigned it to IA because he wanted more information, or sometimes out to the first line supervisor. So I believe that incident review has helped kind of shore that up a little bit. Service complaints by type, again, this is just a pie chart of that. Again, performance, courtesy, service levels are the kind of complaints. Service level is the amount of time it took to respond to a call or lack of response to a call, or anything of that nature.
Can you talk a little more about what performance means in those cases? That's just an unsatisfactory outcome for the complainant.
Generally, a lot of the times during an investigation, they don't feel that the officer took the right action, or that they gave them the time instead of somebody else. The investigation wasn't done to their liking, or any number of things. They had others that are. They do really range from soup to nuts, but I sort of look at the performance of as generally the reporting party feeling like the employees did something they shouldn't have done, or they didn't do something they felt they should have done. They didn't meet the numbers expectations. So we have vehicle crashes and vehicle damage, which are interesting, and we actually started looking at these for multitude of reasons, more so maybe under the training umbrella, which falls kind of in IA umbrella as well. So We had several accidents last year, some of them not at fault, some of them were. And you can see here that fixed objects are a problem.
Yeah, aren't they always?
Yeah, at least it's not the pillars of your own city hall.
I really.
So we try to look at the causes of accidents, whether it's fault or not, and determine if we need to adjust our policy or adjust our training, which we'll see later about what lessons we learned from all of this. And over here is a forcible stop. The type of forcible stop, vehicle use of force can be, it might be a little different than the PIT, which is a police intervention technique. Actually using cars to send cars out to stop pursuits or when people get shot. The other ones could be ramming or any other kind of use of force that isn't a stage PIT. We had several quick response actions that included addressed and those that were ready to share. And it's a difficult situation because the officers have the ability to go from free to calls, but we also have the responsibility to act in a manner that's conducive to the environment and not cause collisions. So our at fault only. Remember what others have. I took a look at, one of the things I wanted to mention related to this data on the vehicle crash plus damages. We track damage to a vehicle even if it isn't an actual crash, just other circumstances when our vehicles get damaged. And some of those, they were a combination of rock chips on a car, progressive those, or we have some they really were supervisors couldn't find that they fit into any of those other categories, but there were a number of oddities there. For your comparison, we're holding pretty steady. We had a little bit of an increase last year and a little bit of a decline in 2016.
Do you recall if, I'm wondering if during the ice storm, I'm assuming they still need to be out there in their vehicles, it was pretty unsafe conditions.
Yes, those were covered in the at faults and not at faults, because I can think of a couple that we went up some icy roads and went backwards. I didn't want to.
Yeah. That contributes to
right
numbers.
And this is an interesting stat just to compare the number of miles driven each year by our fleet.
A lot of them.
So 1.5 million miles. We had done some data kind of looking at the numbers of miles driven with the numbers of crashes. And
It's not a graph.
59 by 1.5 million, I think, is a pretty low ratio.
Yeah.
Vehicles, we follow those as well. We had canvas last year, 2016. And they were initiated for these reasons. So this is the comparison between 2013 and 16. And I believe 2014 was the initiation of our new pursuit policy, which really limited our ability to do so. But they did climb, but significantly down even from 2013.
I was curious to what stat on that slide said that of the 10, 6 were outside of policy. Yeah. No, I was just curious if there's are these newer officers? Is there a gap in training, or just?
Some of them were new officers. I'm just trying to figure them off the top of my head. Not all of them.
It looks like we still have a little work to do there, I guess.
Yeah, some clarification of pursuit. What entails, what qualifies as a pursuit is dealt with as well as reminding, and then you can't get to it.
Well, and this would be more for the chief, but I also wonder if our policy is more conservative than other departments. I think it's more conservative than Springfield, for example. And if, that might, folks are coming from with prior experience and then having to.
Yeah, I think what trips us up in that way is that when a pursuit from an outside agency enters our jurisdiction, the immediate reaction is to want to help in some form, and that can kind of trip people up when they're not thinking about it has to meet the criteria for our pursuit. So sometimes the lag in the development, the information to make that determination is slow coming, and so they kind of get tripped up in that. And I think we're doing a better job of addressing that. We able to support. Our use of doors over the last 3 years has stayed really consistent. And we break it down a little bit here. Factors leading up to force, because what we wanted to go through here was look at why we end up using force and how to look at officers to deal with those situations and hopefully to prevent them or be on the lookout for them. So we had active resistance, which is actually somebody physically resisting or fighting with officers, attempting to flee. Is explanatory and obvious resistance is basically when somebody's standing there and threatening you and making physical postures, implying that it's imminent. 81% of our incidents resulted in arrest. And I would expect to be asked why we didn't arrest everybody. So the answer to that one is actually about the 19% is those that we've taken into custody and referred to other services, mental health screening, taking them to, release them to family members who might be giving them help or any of those other types of things where custody wasn't the best situation or resolution for them. And then again, the average age is 38. So when we use force, our officers are injured on occasion, as are the suspects or the offenders. Our numbers dropped from 2015 by, I think it was 1 actually, that caused that. So fewer officers are being injured. They list typically more than one injury, which are usually abrasions or lacerations. Sometimes we get some more significant injuries. 9 of those cases, 12 officers sustained injuries that result in workman's consequences. On the flip side, 28% of offenders are injured. Again, the same types of injuries, abrasions, lacerations, and taser punctures, which we'll talk about later. We count that as an injury. And 23% of those are taken to the hospital for evaluation because, again, we're arresting 81% of them in the jail. We won't take them unless they're cleared for incarceration. So speaking of tasers, our use increased by 1, which I found interesting. Our effectiveness increased to 60%. And the reason that we don't have as many effective deployments are usually because of clothing, especially in the winter, and or that we're too close when we're deploying the taser and you don't get enough spread between the drugs so it doesn't interrupt the musculature enough. And limited effectiveness, I don't like that because we don't really get an explanation as to why they felt it was not effective. It's more than any number of things. But generally, I'd say it's pretty effective, at least in the summer. We started tracking it, I think, last year, the taser verbal only. So, like me, I don't have a taser, but if I go out on the street and I encounter a situation where I might want to be able to deploy one, I could tell the person that I'm going to tase them if they continue their behavior. And then 7 of those 9 times, it was just the mere threat of the taser without even taking it out or exposing it as gun compliance. So I think that's a win. We've had a number of applications and
sorry, and that's not considered use of force then?
technically not.
Yeah.
So we wanted to track it because I think it's really telling.
No, it's good.
Where's that?
I think people are more fearful of the taser than they are of the gun. Speaking of which, we used the K9 9 times last year. We increased our applications, and some of these were actually for outside agency assist. Again, active resistance, assault on officers and attempts to flee in criminal situations. 3-year trend. This is a hard to read one, but it's really pretty telling that we don't use a lot of force, generally speaking. We have boxing in it over there too, which is a vehicle use of force, but our physical force is relatively low, with most of it showing up in our takedowns, our taser use, and strikes, examples. We actually have a percentage of that. We didn't find that. We got a lot more information than that. So I think our total force is less than 2%. I think that comes through the arrest data. So these are the number of arrests annually.
Sorry, I just had a question. In terms of these kinds of breaking these down by numbers, when you have a situation where there may be more than one officer responding to a scene and more than one officer using force in that circumstance, how does that get tallied? Is it each officer's use of force is part of the tally?
That's right. Right. You get the reportable level of force. It's in there. Well, actually, even if it's not, but if it's a reportable use of force incident that's going in, the sergeant will put in all these.
Thank you.
Another question on that. So I'm very sure you guys track use of force per officer. Is there any kind of trending that you guys have seen on certain officers using force more often, and if that does happen? I mean, there's so few relative to the number of officers that you won't have an average of like one per officer, because you want like 5, 6, 7. What happens? Is there any kind of conversation about their decision making or anything like that? Is there all the policy?
That is something that we pay attention to, and sometimes have conversations in the meetings between the internal affairs staff and the auditor's office, and then depending on what we see, that might be follow-up might happen at the in the chain of command, the supervisor level of the officer. It's a program called early intervention, which we haven't fully implemented here. So we can look at those numbers, and so if something seems startling, then we might do a little bit deeper dive into that to kind of ascertain if it's an issue we need to address or continue watching it. We hope that the work we're doing here to get that system fully operating. Thanks for that. All right. So back to arrest, you can see we got, I think it was about a 1,900 arrest drop. I mean, the chart makes it look pretty significant, but we're talking 200 reach one of the times, but enough. Couldn't actually tell you the specific reason for that, other than maybe the number of calls for service are up, the level of the calls for service, and the number of training officers running the calls, and the number of officers that we have on the street. These are the actual numbers of people that were taken into custody and transported to either the jail, treatment facility, which would most likely be the hospital, and or ED headquarters to use the breathalyzer. So you can see that even though the arrests, total number of arrests were down in the last slide, we're still making physical custody arrests and doing business international right now.
Sorry, I had to catch you on the full presentation. And there was charges against the offenders. The one that kind of stood out was this interfering at 63. So we talked about maybe doing a deeper dive on that, and like whether it's kind of used as a different tool, like maybe overuse and at times. Have you ever kind of dig into that a little bit more?
So when we were looking at these, actually the year before, 2015, and I looked at these stats, the same question came up, and what it really is going to entail is for us and the Blue Team to change or to train to include what the original offense was, because frankly what I see, what I think you see with the interfering and the disorderly and obstruction and so forth, there's like 3 of them that
resisting.
Right, resisting.
Or
and what you see is kind of like the end result of what happened and not necessarily why the officers were called there in the first place. Because they could be have responded to a burglary or criminal trespass or disorderly conduct. And when the fight ensues, then they add the additional charges, and that's what the supervisor is keying in on there versus every single charge that they were charged with, or what the predicating offense was. So I think for us internally, we need to figure out how to get to that core of what they were really contacted or arrested for, not subsequent charges.
Very good.
Were there any other questions?
Hey, could you explain why this slide shows that our grand total number of arrests went up this year, but the previous slide shows it went down?
Right. So these are the total number of arrests in regards to cite and custody, any kind of charge that equals an arrest for reporting requirements. Correct, Cindy? So anytime we do a cite or open container, but it's not a physical arrest. So we cite somebody in lieu of custody versus actually this slide, which is physically taking them into custody and lodging them somewhere else. Or at least transporting them for a breathalyzer and then releasing. That's considered physical custody. Is that?
Yes.
Right here.
Is there a reason why DUI related is down so much?
I could not speak to that.
I think it's the number of officers we had available and we're going to sign. You see that it's higher. 2017.
Okay. Well, I'm going to guess that it wasn't like DUI has gone down. Like,
No, I don't think it's low.
So you support this compared to arrest and I shouldn't see this slide. The game will get it back. So use of force out of the 10,000 arrests, cite in lieu of custody and physical arrest, we have 196 uses of force, which I think got us to a 2%, less than 2% force ratio. And I'm going to speed through here and see if we can get wrapped up to other time. Our monthly average for use of force complaints and accommodations, which is including accommodations or stand right up there. Use of force has stayed really consistent, complaints have dropped. What's happening over there? More communication. Accommodations, these are the sources of accommodations, and we always our most common source. I'm going to give them one of the points, which I think is wonderful. Actually, it tells about a 4-minute episode. The themes for accommodations include being tactful and compassionate, efficient, professional, helpful, and general appreciation. Some of the lessons learned, this is what I was talking about in reviewing our IAs and our vehicle use of force and everything else, is what we can get out of that and how we can be better at what we do and have less of those IAs. Driving continues to be a common theme for us. We have been steadily improving. The complaints have generally been, or the coaching has been to model safe and courteous driving behavior, because if the public sees you not using your turn signal, then they get upset and they get a ticket for doing the same thing. And also being more aware of pedestrians and bicyclists. Equipment issues generally centered around the use of our in-car video system with body-worn camera. We were thinking of our mics to our video, and oftentimes we didn't have audio to go along with the video. And we also have actually implemented the new body-worn camera system, which kind of tightened up when we have to use our ICBs and our body-worn camera. Privacy is obviously one of those things that we do some complaints on, and so we do some coaching and reminding about the manner of telling stories to our words and how we interact with the public, so they professional and communications, and also researching like our de-escalation techniques instead of crazy people sleepers. Performance has been talked about that, but generally people are upset because we're not responding or checking our email or voicemail. Customer service issues, again, de-escalating situations.
the evidence and stuff that we lost before we that's the courtesy, and that kind of goes with the courtesy aspect, but really just serving the public, the perceptions that we can provide to the public, and offering explanations, transparency in our work. These are all things that we can coach our employees on the time of training. And training, we did a little more emergency vehicle operations this year, especially to address those driving issues. We got paid and pursued volunteer review. We did some special training with our supervisors for incident management, pursuits, and other driving-related issues. We conducted some domestic violence, sexual assault training at our in-service with the PA's office. We did some volunteer reviews during training on search and seizure of vehicles and interesting and fun. The defendant tactics, we continue to reinforce the use of de-escalation techniques versus force, and we've done some training bulletins dealing with the evidence handling procedures, documentation, and also providing legal updates on current changes in case law. I know we're really close to the end. We continue. We do a lot of policy issues here with Kyle. As you guys know, we did do some PLPJ in 2016. I worked with BPST to get that up and running, and then Will and Julie Smith and the rest of the team presented all of that to the department this year. Code of conduct you guys are doing and working through. As you can see, we had several other policies, and there's probably 100 more that aren't really decided that are under review. So with that concludes our presentation. Do you guys have any questions, Steve?
Well, one thing to add. So we didn't talk about accommodations, but I want to shout that out. 463 accommodations, or 75% were from the community members. I think that's really something to point out. Well done.
Any other questions for me?
So I ran through really fast. You guys did it, and I got the PowerPoint that you did in your email. But if you do have any other questions that you want to follow up with, shoot us an email. We'll be happy to give you some more answers. I think we probably overanalyzed this stuff and know a lot more than what we shared. So thank you.
Highlight, if you don't mind. Being able to do incident reviews and inquiries is pretty important. It's a way of treating our employees a little bit more humanely. So before we more widely use the inquiry classification or the incident review, the only way to formally look into a community member's complaint or even an internally generated complaint was to classify it as something. So if community member alleged that we used too much force, the only way to formally investigate it was to classify it as an excessive use of force. We have the whole process that we have for internal affairs is been designed out of collective bargaining agreement. So we have timelines that we have to meet. So when a complaint comes in and it's classified, and I'll just use this excessive use of force for the purpose of this discussion, that means within so many days we need to notify that employee that they've been accused of using excessive force, which is a horrible email to receive. So, and then we investigate it, and after talking to a few people, we realized, well, there's no policy violation here. We already know that, but we would complete the investigation and adjudicate it. So by classifying this as an inquiry or an incident review, we get to just sort of stop everything for a second, make those preliminary inquiries, and come to the conclusion that it either is or isn't a policy violation. If it is, then we should look into it. It looks as though it is, I should say. And so that's why you'll see those numbers changing as much as they have. Last year we have this way to do something rational, and it's a lot easier on our employees than a little thing. And then the pursuits, the policy we have is, relative to all the agencies in the Willamette Valley is extremely restricted. You can only pursue for violent felonies or violent crimes. So when we see a violation of it now,
it's a pretty modest violation of our pursuit policy, and even that, even the violations we see now are more restrictive performance by our officers than what's allowed by the other agencies. So I feel pretty, we don't want the policy to be violated, but I feel pretty good about the self-discipline that our officers are exercising in those 10 cases. Thank you. Since you brought it up, I was going to ask about that, because in the documentation showing pursuits initiated traffic violations, and you were saying that they can't pursue that only for felons. And wondered if those represent the ones that were disciplined for failure to uphold policy, or is that confused, or is that not necessarily so? And can you think of circumstances where they might be justified? I don't know what is going to classify it as a pursuit. City might have to help answer that. So the one, for instance, that's classified as pursuit is traffic violation. How does that mean?
Or if it is something that might be causal for the try to supervise pretty thoughtful review of that sort of action and stuff by that.
Well, I was more concerned about the state person stopped the speeding and runs red light. This is how far do they have to go before it's a pursuit? They're not stopping. Maybe they're not speeding up. Maybe they're just not stopping. At what point is it classified as a pursuit? And at what point is it a failed traffic stop? And I guess that those definitions are what determine, in my mind, what I see in statistics here. So I was trying to put some context with it, but it may take a little longer. So
I don't know if there is a right. Generally, having reviewed a couple of these, and was the officer violating the traffic control device in some manner to continue to so once they try to follow the stop sign and stop light, and the officer is engaging the lights and siren, and they violate the device, and that's kind of where our pursuit is all at.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for coming in and presenting it for us. I thank you for clarifying. We have a lot of information tonight, so I'm going to move on to the auditor's report. Thank you for coming on board.
My pleasure, and with me today is Beatrice Hernandez. You hired her last August. She is our community engagement coordinator and translation specialist. Before I mess it up. I was going to have her do her presentation first, but just sort of, because of the IA report and use of force thing, I just got that today about 20 minutes ago, so that's good to see that the important numbers are the same. When I first got here, and before Chief Kearns was the permanent chief here, I used to talk about these numbers, and then EPD would sort of react to those. And then a few years back, I started doing these sports reports, and EPD used to react to that. So it is a blessing that the initiative that they've taken to report this death causes me to do less work, thankfully. And so I really appreciate the report that they did, and again, we use the same database system, but that they have stepped forward and led on issuing these kinds of reports and the depth of those reports. So I really commend them, IAs, Cindy Coleman, in particular, Chief Kearns. I have to say, I've been in the oversight business about over 30 years. I don't know of another place in which the oversight person gets 100% unfettered access to the information that I get here, and that's a tribute to Chief Curtis. He has never in my 8 years here placed an obstacle in my path. We have disagreed occasionally on particular issues, but never once has he placed an obstacle in my path. And I can tell you, in most cities in America, there are obstacles that are placed in the path. So I wanted to say that before we get started. A couple of things, again, I'm going to show you the same thing that you just saw.
We only choose to disagree on the most public and controversial cases.
We do it in some cases. And I appreciate the job that he has. I'm amazed at resource allocation for policing west of the Mississippi versus east of the Mississippi on a per capita basis. Just amazing. I just learned that San Antonio has, or San Jose, California has 900 police officers with a population of over 1 million people. That's just, there are more police officers in Cincinnati with a population of 300,000 than there are in San Jose, California with a population of 1 million. And they don't have their share of crime in San Jose, so it's just amazing to me. But if we look at the complaints, one of the things that was talked about was the inquiries and interviews. And there's simply a rise there because the officers are, far more officers are turning on their ITVs or capturing audio in a particular incident. And so when I get a complaint and I see something that, you know, okay, how am I going to classify this? The first question I ask is if you have ITV or audio. In most cases they do. It's far more complicated when they don't. But that's simply why there's that rise in the inquiries. The service complaints, I would say the mode is response time. Not, you know, come from a place where if you call for a police officer, they're there 5 minutes. Because there's 1,000 of them and, you know, I don't have a lot to do, but they're there in like 5 minutes. And again, it's different out west. In terms of the allegation, there's content, we talked about that, you talked about the incident reviews. Yeah, I eventually assigned Leah to support report. I was never go over this thing because it's pretty close. Scared. One of the things I think that that was important to talk about was the vehicle pursuit policy. I use different terminology. I use high-speed chases. High-speed chases to me are different than pursuits. Pursuits, you set up perimeters, you set up things like that. Again, if there's not as many officers on the street, that's a little bit more difficult to do. When I first got here 8 years ago, I was less than pleased with the number of high-speed chases that went through our neighborhoods. And it seemed like Whitaker was one of the top spots for that. And I really appreciate the cultural shift that has occurred under Chief Kern's leadership to reduce those. And that's not an easy thing, I think, for the officers to accept, because that's one of the exciting aspects of the job, and I appreciate that they do. So when you ask about it, is it younger officers or anything like that, it's about 1 or 2 that perhaps haven't yet captured the culture of what we're trying to do. Sometimes supervisors aren't quickly responding because the supervisor can immediately stop that. Why is it important to me? Over 300 people a year are killed in high-speed pursuits. Over 100 of those are innocent people. The last thing we need is a police car chasing a car thief and smashing into a minivan with 8 kids in it. And so they have to come up with different tactical strategies to deal with those kinds of things. And they've done a very good job of that. They're smart people and they figured it out. So it's the high-speed chases that is one of the issues that was important to me when I got here, and that has diminished significantly. You asked what sort of things, you write about the traffic things. Mostly it's like you watch it, you know it when you see it. that just like there's reckless driving here and we don't want that to occur. Even though the Supreme Court has said that pretty much, and I forget the case, it's sort of like even on a speeding thing that you can do that. But again, here we don't want that to happen because we don't want innocent people killed. And so I really appreciate that. One of the things that was also talked about was sort of on the use of force thing, or investigation, is when you go to sustained application. What you don't see in either any of the complaints or in sustained allegations is a citizen complaint of use of force. I think we had a few that even too small to even make it in terms of the complaint. My theory is because of what's called blue teaming, which now on any use of force almost above resisted handcuffing, the supervisor is required to come to the scene, talks to the officer, talks to the person involved, asks the person if they need medical help or medics, asks if they need to go to the hospital, and I believe that strategy reduces the temperature of the entire event. When it was just the officer and cuff them up and take them, that officer's a fairly high level of adrenaline. Again, my theory. Someone coming who's calm, is a supervisor, and talks to that person, I believe reduces the temperature of the event. And so I don't have the staff, 50 university researchers to look into that, but that's my theory. And when they talk about the numbers, and Carolyn mentioned like 198, 50% of those are now taser points. Based on the events of about 8 or 9 years ago, the taser is notorious in this town. It seems to be very effective. So you take those out of the equation, and again, all these use of forces are reported, or they better be reported, and supervisors and officers get in trouble for that. They have 99 missed. When you take away the taser points, you have 99 out of 10,577 arrestable or citable offenses. So you have a 0.94%. It's 2% if you count the taser points. I don't count those. When I worked in justice and when you see consent decrees across the country, the number that sort of starts getting people's attention is 5%. So this is, I don't know what the percentage lower than that is, but 0.94% is a very good number. And when they talk about it in their report, again, I'm sort of going off track because she just gave me the numbers, and I was going to get it anyway. When they talk about the number of people that go to the hospital, they did not have, and I don't know if we'll have track or not, admissions. I think that number is, I'm certain it's less than 5. I would be surprised if it was more than 1 or 2. When someone is actually admitted to the hospital for an injury as a result of use of force. Again, they normally get treated in a release, and again, a lot of that has to do with that sergeant at the scene. If that person basically is asking for a medic or asking to go to the hospital, they'll get transported. Sometimes there's also the intersection of going to the hospital for a minor injury with also being taken to University District Hospital, UDH, because of a mental health issue. So, again, I think they've really done a good job. Sometimes in policing, there's words like, that are just jargon, like verbal judo. I'm kind of guessing officers still think that's jargon. When they started with de-escalation, I don't know if officers thought that was jargon. I don't think they think it's jargon anymore if they ever thought it was. I think it's part of their mindset now. Is we don't have to jump out of the car, start fighting with the person, and handcuff them and take them to jail. We really are trying to de-escalate. We've had a surge of officers downtown. I probably have had less complaints about downtown officers in 8 years I've been here. Maybe not count one or two of the dog ordinance things. But they're doing just a really great job of talking to people and recognizing that taking folks to jail might not always be the most effective way. Yes, sir.
So on that note, I mean, a lot of the folks who have interactions with police officers downtown are unhoused, they have less access to services, less access to auditor or awareness of it. Do you think that plays a role in the fact that there's a low number of reports to your office?
We probably have the highest number of per capita complaints in any city in America. That would match our number. We have a very engaged community. Officers are more than happy to refer us to the auditor's office when they're complaining about something that's happening in the downtown area. We have visibility. Beatrice will talk more about our greater community engagement, but I will match our per capita numbers against anybody in the nation in terms of the volume of complaints. Do some people know about us? Does everybody know about it? But we are, Seattle, for example, gets about 600 or 700, and they're 7 times the population that we have here, 6 times the population, so, and we get about 400. So, Boise gets 49. I would have a nice couch in my office, so I only got 49 complaints. It's a very engaged community. It really is. Again, there's still some problems there, and I'm sure the chief worries about it as much as I do. We always worry about that 1 or 2 officers, like about 18 years ago, that decide that they're going to do horrible things to people. And I think that remains probably our greatest fear. We talked about discipline. We talked about discipline. Coaching, counseling, resigning for investigation, suspension. We can't talk about individual officers. We can only do sort of a trend analysis, so that's what we've done for that in our report. Accommodations, and I think someone made a good point, about 75% of those are from the public. Much like virtually every government organization in the nation, we don't have a good enough job committing our own employees. Probably my office, I feel that way at this moment in time. I suppose the chief sort of feels that way as well. We could probably write a lot of letters of commendation that we don't. So I think that's a very good something that people do go that way. So before I turn this over, I think, again, like I said, basically gave you all the numbers that I was going to give, and we were pretty close. I think y'all got our annual report. We summarize every case as good as we can. We have restrictions based on the public records law that we're not allowed, name, rank, and serial number for folks. We had it in Ohio. Sure made life a lot easier. But the state of Oregon has either 358 or 458 exemptions, and they're very protective of public employee personnel records, and so that's sort of what we have to live with, the rules that we have to live with. So, again, if I was in Cincinnati, I could say, let me make sure I'm in the officer. Frank had 4 complaints, 3 were excessive force, and 2 were sustained, and we could literally list that in any report that we had, but it's different here. And so that requires a lot of trust in what we do. And we don't get that trust from every segment of the community. That's what government here is in general. That have a lot more trust because there's a lot of things that are not open to the public. And so sometimes, that's a free comfort. I do take our responsibilities very seriously and what we try to do. And I think we're very sensitive, for example, for the mental health, on the mental health supports, for example, we look at those very carefully. State law enforcement contact committee, all complaints of bias and racial profiling are reported to the state now, and they want to look at the investigation. So they have a person from the state university that does that now. So I think that's an important step for the state and for what we do here as well. So probably in our summaries they're more detailed than they've been in the past. That point is for that reason, is for that state requirement. This demonstrates the best as we can that we really want those with, I guess, like true goals, feeling analogy I'm coming with right now. So,
Are we ready for yours of the interest?
she's going to talk about our community engagement strategy we provided to this report to council on, or about May 8th.
I'm planning to run for you too, have a time schedule is following. So your schedule's off at 6:50 p.m. and we're going to start the next conversation.
Okay. I started mine at 30 minutes, so basically,
If you need more time, what I was going to suggest, if you need more time for your presentation, you're welcome to come back at our next meeting and continue with it.
I think she can knock this down first.
Okay.
I do that. So I'm here today to explain a little of what I have been doing this past year. My ultimate goal is basically to inform the community of our services. There are so many people in the community that don't know that we exist. So just spreading that information and letting people know that we are available for their needs. But also build a relationship of trust between the community and our office, the community and law enforcement. So that knowledge that people have of the services that we provide and then having a better relationship with law enforcement. Just a list of some presentations that, or interviews that we have done. We built a little report when I started my position, just explaining the goals that they wanted me to accomplish with this new job. I just employed and registered guard. I'm trying to engage in social media to see if people will follow our page or just, it's a good way to spread information fast and efficiently. So I did a Facebook Live interview with a local Spanish radio station. And KLCC also has a bilingual program Sunday evenings, and I was able to go there as well and share what we do at our office. I'm not going to read through all of these, but this year has been a lot of creating new materials that we didn't have previously and updating ones that we had before. We have frequently asked questions brochures with the most common questions that we get at our office. And most of these things, all of these things mostly are in both English and Spanish. Our online complaint form has been updated, so now there is a Spanish option. If you would like to submit electronically, our phone system has a Spanish option if you want to leave a message, and you can do that now. We also have presentations, both short and more expensive if we ever go to community events and they want us to present this information as well. And one of the projects I'm working on right now is creating an anonymous survey. We want to get a feel for how the community feels about not just UCD, but law enforcement in general. So I'm trying to create questions that will give us a better sense of just their thoughts on law enforcement, their concerns, maybe suggestions for improvement that they may have. And again, this isn't to target UCD specifically, but just law enforcement agencies in general. Just community feedback about how they feel about that. One thing, we have a new logo that you can see below. New pens, tabling materials. We're trying to engage the community by assisting a lot of events. And we're physically, I go to a lot of Latino events because in the past we haven't received a lot of complaints from the Latino community, and we want to engage that particular sector of the community. So, this is just events that we tend to go to. Of course, we always go to the city commission meetings, a couple of fairly big Latino events where the Mexican consulate came, and I think they served a total of around 400 people in a span of 2 days, so it was a great opportunity to talk to the Latino folks here. And the 2016 Posada is put on every year by local nonprofits that primarily serve the Latino community as well, and I was able to table at that event as well, and that went very well.
We have some buzz, we have some buzz heads, and we're going to do this thing. Like one of the things I think that the impression might be, oh, they're trying to recruit complainants. In fact, complaint numbers are down, number one. And what the interest has been able to do is a lot of triage, a lot of things that might come in as a complaint just simply because people don't understand the system. And so she's able to explain sort of how the system works or direct them to folks who will understand the system, like the court system. And so it's been really helpful that she's been able to triage one of those issues for us.
Got a lot of calls. I was here before, but I was doing more than before. And a lot of those calls I can't help directly because they either involve like Springfield Police Department or State Patrol. But like Mark says, I always try to provide them with the resources that I follow up with if we can't help them directly at our office. Mark mentioned the bus ad. We also aired a PSA at Mackenzie River Broadcasting. But Atlanta, they had the first local Spanish radio station. So that was, again, a good opportunity for us to just a 30-second PSA about what we do. And I think part of the number of calls that we got was because of that, because a lot of people tuned into that. So that was good. In the future, we'd like to do, I think, Mark, you can talk a little more about this, but a public forum.
Talk to the chief and one of the ideas that Futures came up with was a community forum, a safety-based forum. We know that if we just have a forum, not too many people are going to come. But if we have a public safety forum where there's Spanish-speaking people from the fire department and from the police department and from our office and EMT services, that all just completely in Spanish, that it might help sort of bridge some of those understanding gaps of government. All this is macro in its project scope, not micro, in trying to build trust in communities that don't always understand how government works and where English is not their first language. And so that's one of the things that we've talked about at certainly come to fruition. I know the chief has numerous officers that speak Spanish, and certainly the fire department does as well. So even when you call for an emergency, if you can talk to someone in Spanish and learn how the process works, we're hopeful that that will help close that gap of understanding.
So I mean, I could talk in more detail, but for the sake of time, those are just an idea of things that I have been doing. And I always ask people that if you know of community events that you think would be good for either our office or myself to attend to, please contact me so that I can continue doing this type of work.
Thank you. Thank you both for the presentation. I missed the City Council meeting where you came and presented this, so this is great to see. Very exciting, really wonderful work. It really goes a long way in my mind to fulfilling the goals that we talked about, you know, probably 2 years ago, Mark, about creating this position and doing this kind of outreach. So I'm really pleased to see it bearing fruit. And I'm glad to see that you're hooked into the integration network, because I was actually participating on that way back when it first got started, and I've kind of dropped off. I mean, it's a great gathering with people who are really paying attention to the what's going on, particularly in the Latino community, but in the immigrant community in general. So, you know, I see this work as really furthering the explicit goals of council to affirm that we want to be a safe and welcoming, inclusive community, particularly for our immigrant neighbors. So thank you for that. And then I'm just wondering, in these conversations that you're able to have you been letting people know that we as a city, you know, expanded and strengthened our quote-unquote sanctuary city laws and ordinances so that folks can kind of overcome some of the fear they might have about law enforcement contact?
We haven't done a lot of our own events, so far my outreach has been more of assisting other people's events. So in the future, I'm assuming if we were to have an open forum, that would obviously be something that we would bring up. Whenever I talk to people, the phone calls that have gotten, there was, I think, her first Spanish complaint that actually was a complaint or something that we followed through with, just the constant fear of making sure that nothing was going to happen if they went through with it. They almost wanted to not go through with it because of that persistent fear. And I did mention that and told her that she was really safe. This is something that we want to hear about and explain how the process works so that to ease those fears, because it's a common pattern, and especially in the Latino community, that's still very true today. So.
It's an uphill walk. For example, we had the anonymous survey, I think it's Central, and we thought, well, let's give away gift cards for, have a drawing for gift cards for Starbucks or whatever. And they would fill out the anonymous survey, but the gift card drawing actually required them to put their names down. They didn't put their names down.
And it was separate from the survey, so I was trying to separate two friends, and they still were like, no, it's okay, so.
Yeah, the fear factor is indescribable.
Well, I was just, I think any opportunity you have to reassure people is going to be important, because it's going to take repeated reassurance and demonstration, I think, even for that trust to build a little bit.
I think, Chief, you mentioned somewhere your studies of underreporting of crime, particularly by Latino populations, because of that fear of attracting undue attention to their immigration status.
Yeah, we're not able to analyze our criminal reports in that way, but major cities have been doing that, and they've found that there is less crime reports from Latino communities over the last year or so than in previous years, so I'm sure it's happening here.
Yeah, and it's hard to prove negative.
Right.
Thank you so much.
So, yeah, in today's day and age, it's a good thing that there's some outreach to the Latino community, and that in some sense it helps kind of open up from the shadows, brings in a little bit more of an option, I guess. I guess my question to you would be, what kind of response was there in your office from your riots or interviews? Was there an increase in Latinos coming in, or primary Spanish-speaking individuals coming in and sharing reports with you?
So I can share with you the comments that were being made as we were hearing that interview. They were all very grateful for the information, which is the same feedback that we all get from us whenever we present. It's just like, guys, this is that information, very good information to know. Because it was online, after that interview, we got a lot of following on our Facebook page, so people are engaging and wanting to stay informed with that. Again, I can't say that the calls we've gotten have been because of the claims, but I'm assuming since I started, we've gotten more calls in Spanish, so I think that's a huge reason why.
Okay, and then myself, and then I'm going to end it too, because we've passed our time.
Are you guys coordinating in any way with the Office of Human Rights and Neighborhood Development?
I meet with Lorna every once in a while, and we are starting to, we share information back and forth. So,
one of the things, I'm the HRC, and one of the things we've been trying to do is expand awareness of the hate-based crime reporting and hate-based reporting itself. So just want to make sure that actually wasn't there.
Okay, and I'd like to thank Mark and Beatrice both for coming tonight. This is a very comprehensive report from Mark's part, first of all, and Carter let me know that she will make your report available to the rest of the commissioners in an email, because we were talking about government at the time. We appreciate it. And for my part, I'd like to just add a plug that we had a good program, mano a mano, for the police department, and unfortunately the community service officer, crime prevention officer, left the department, and I guess the program kind of disbanded after that. But I remember specifically officers going to going to community areas, Latino community, and talking to them about the law in Oregon that doesn't allow them to, and also about how to report things anonymously and keep people from having to worry about immigration and such. So that program was very helpful, so I hope that you all will make the extension of that something helpful in the community. Thank you.
And it would be remiss by Vicki Cox is here, our senior program coordinator, does a fabulous job. Our de facto mental health counselor for office visits, and Leah Pitcher, deputy auditor, does a great job as well. So I want to recognize that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move right on in the agenda into downtown. The downtown safety update. So, okay, so our speakers tonight are a couple of City of Eugene success stories. And I mean that. I think you've met Julie Smith before. Julie's the sergeant for the downtown team, and she's been with the department for how many years, Julie? 21 years. She's been a detective and promoted to sergeant, and has been running the team very well. She started the CORT program, among other things, and she's admired by the people who live on the street and by the business operators and everybody who lives, works, and plays downtown who knows her, so it's pretty impressive. The two other presenters include Jeff Perry, who's been with the city for about 25 years. He started out in finance and then became was promoted to municipal court administrator, and now he's in charge of facilities, the city's facilities, including all things downtown. And he's been doing that for about 4 years, and he's one of the leads in the downtown operations team. And then Lieutenant Sean McGann has been with the city for about 25 years, and he's had quite a number of assignments on patrol, campus team when we had one of those. He was on the explosive disposal unit, the SWAT team, and probably a lot of other things. And he's also a lieutenant colonel in the Oregon National Guard, and not long ago graduated from the War College. He's accomplished both in his law enforcement and his military career. So I'll hand it off to you.
All right. So I'll kick things off here and talk a little bit about what we're doing downtown this summer, and then hand it off to the candidate service and to talk about more specifically about the police efforts that are happening. So early in the year, probably beginning of February, the executive management team formed a group which we're now calling ourselves the Downtown Operations Team, the Downtown Ops Team. Chief Eugene on that group, but one of the execs that helped form the group. And it's probably about 10 or 15 employees, and include representatives from almost every division, obviously including facilities and police, but also postal services and recreation, a lot of different folks from around the organization that had an interest in downtown. And basically the team tasked with addressing some of the issues that we've had over the last several years. And in fact, we had a discussion at that first meeting, and the purpose of the group was to create a safe and clean downtown and our urban parks that are welcoming to everyone. And the outcomes of that effort were to be achieved through environmental enhancement, social service partnerships, police and security presence, as well as programming activities. And so the group started working actively at that point to make the group of downtown make it welcoming for everyone. And so it was an exciting effort and a great team effort. We kicked things off and really looked at it and said, okay, well, the first step will be to increase enforcement and focus on safety, and then clean things up, do some infrastructure improvement, and then program the heck out of downtown, basically. And so that's what I'll talk about today. And so the first piece of that is safety and security. And so working closely with EPD, we brought in 4 additional officers as part of this effort, 2 dedicated to downtown and 2 dedicated to our urban parks. And that's one thing that I should have mentioned is that you know, there's a lot of effort that's focused downtown, but we're trying to pay attention closely to all of the surrounding parks like Monroe, W&J, Interview, and so on. And we don't want to, you know, push issues around, but really address them. And so we're paying close attention to all those areas. And also, you know, other neighborhoods, such as Whitaker and so on. So 4 officers were brought in, dedicated to the effort. We also, working with Parks Open Space, hired 4 park ambassadors, and they're bicycle ambassadors that patrol around our local parks and greet folks, give them information. If they see issues, they work closely with EPD on things that come up, and that's been super successful. We've had a couple in the past. This year we have 4, so we're very happy about that. We also hired a park block host. So we have a dedicated, basically he's a park ambassador. He was trained with park ambassadors, and he's dedicated to the park blocks. And Daniel Watson has been doing an excellent job. If you happen to go through downtown and the park blocks, you might get the opportunity to see Daniel. He might give you some information about events happening. But he's also done a great job of just you know, keeping a close eye on things, making it a positive environment. He helps set things up for activities during the day, so it's very exciting. One of the other things that focuses our safety and security efforts, we also been trying to work with some of the other safety and security, I should say security entities downtown, such as the Red Hat, some of the hired security agencies and so on, to really you know, work together with the joint philosophy, so we're all in sync with how we're approaching issues as they're going and so on. And so that's been an ongoing effort, and we continue to have monthly meetings with all the different entities down there, including LPD as well. There's a couple of the officers that are working downtown, or from the department, getting things. The other piece of this is that we really was really important to our team is to not just enforce, but actually really try to do a better job with some of the social issues, social services issues we're seeing downtown. And so we really, you know, community court's been a great success story, and we've been doing everything we can to leverage that program. We gave them a little bit more funding to help with just the amount of people that come into the program. It's, I think, about twice as popular as they projected initially. We have a team that's been working with homeless youth and 15 night program. We've also expanded the court program that Sergeant Smith is involved into our parks. It was originally focused on downtown, but now we're utilizing that program for our parks as well. I assume everyone knows what that is, community outreach response team. And then we've done a lot of coordination with other social services partners, so we're continuing to just build relationships. And finally, we're working on this now. We haven't implemented it, but looking at day storage lockers. So there's a lot of folks downtown. They have all their belongings with them, and they can't get services when they need it, such as the library, community court, other things. And so we're looking at some options for those folks to be able to serve them. We also focused right away on the infrastructure downtown and maintenance. And so one of the things that we knew is that there wasn't a lot of signage, and there wasn't a lot of the expectations were very clear to folks living downtown. And so we immediately rolled out some new signs in the park blocks. They are park blocks rule signs, but we had nothing that actually said park blocks. And which was kind of funny. Sergeant Smith pointed that out. It's like, oh yeah. So now it's clearly designated as park, you can tell. We obviously rolled out the dog ordinance, and we put signage downtown just so everyone understands what that is. And kind of on the peripheral around downtown, so when people come in, they know that there is an ordinance, and I guess the opportunity for the officers to remind folks about that. We're also currently working on signage for our Be campaign, which is a joint effort with a variety of local agencies. But really the intent is just promoting positive signage and positive behavior downtown. So that's actually going to be in a different format. We're working on as stickers and maybe even things we can put on the sidewalk. And this is a program we're implementing probably next week. It basically mimics the Park Watch program, and so if there are issues, non-emergency issues downtown, a person can log on to our website and enter, they might see some sort of illegal but non-emergency issue, and they can report that to the police. I think it's called Logic Vet System, or they can report a infrastructure issue, some broken sidewalk or whatever it might be, and that'll come into the facilities into our division, and we'll be able to field those messages to field those. Something we just haven't had in the past, so we're excited about that.
So, Jeff, probably about a year ago, I had suggested to the assistant city manager, particularly when there were a lot of conflicts around Keesey Square, which was signage that said "Share the Square." So I don't know if there's a place in your signage for that, but it could apply to Broadway and Olive as well. So.
No, that's great. We were just talking about some positive signage with the new tables that went into Keesey, and I can talk about that in a moment. So it's welcoming to everybody. Another thing that we kicked off right away, that's not the best picture, but that's one of our 2 pressure washers. We hired 2 just pressure wash the heck out of downtown. And that was, we thought, well, we'll just give it a shot and see how it goes. It's really been a positive, it's cleaner, it is cleaner, it's working, people see that we're making an effort. So we're very excited about that. And it's very responsive, so we get to hey, can you take care of this when we do it? And so it's been really neat. We're doing it. 2 most popular places in the city right now. We're also implementing a restroom in the Park Block. It's a trailer-mounted restroom. It's much better than the portable restrooms we have right now. It's basically like an RV restroom, and it will be mobile. I've been told that will be coming next week. We're gonna actually wrap it so it has kind of some cool decoration on it, and probably help prevent tanks and that sort of thing. But that'll be coming soon. And our park host will host it or attend it. So somebody needs a restroom, then he'll let them in, and that'll help a lot with some of the problematic activities we've seen with the portables. Also, one of my favorite programs we have going on downtown is our hanging basket program. They're really neat. Hanging baskets all over downtown and the planters. And kind of on the side that we, a couple of years ago, moved completely away from pesticide use, and now we use beneficial insects such as ladybugs, bees, and whatnot. And it's pretty neat. We do that with children in the farmers market. They release the ladybugs and everything. Fun thing downtown. Another piece of this effort, and we're coordinating actually with a different team, Projects for Public Spaces, and that's the consultant that we brought in last year to evaluate downtown, make recommendations on the public spaces throughout downtown, and the consultant gave us a lot of good information, and they gave us some pretty candid information about some of the issues we're dealing with, and so we've taken that and really run with it. And one of the things that they focused on was lighter, lighter, quicker, and cheaper. And that's, don't spend 2 years planning this, do it now, get it out there and get things going. So that's why we immediately brought in pressure wash. We brought in a lot of different things right away. We're continuing to do that throughout the summer. One of the recommendations, they talk about all of our different public spaces, Broadway Plaza, Keesey Square, the park blocks, Old Center Plaza, and then the area around the library are some of the key public spaces where we see the most traffic. And so they made some recommendations about what we can do to really help activate it. And this is just these are some examples up above, and then just a rendering of how we could build out the space there in Keesey to really make that, possibly a coffee shop or food, and then do that. So what we're doing this season is bringing in big carts in the evening. We have a beer truck that comes in. I guess that's my idea. Or not, but it is really to catch the evening after work crowds, kind of, you know, that there's kind of a dead zone there where there's not a lot of people around. So we're really trying to just bring in positive activity. And we're doing a lot of that in park blocks as well. This is one of the other projects that I'm working with my team in facilities to build a deck in the park blocks. There's a lot of space, but a lot of that still needs to be used for the Saturday market and other events that are going on. So we took some of the space where there's just nothing but shrubs. We'll relocate the shrubs, but we're going to build a deck that can help facilitate, other activities and chairs and seating and things like that during the day. And it's really the goal is to make it kind of a special spot where people kind of see, oh, we have all this neat stuff going on down there. So it's really just to focus on positive activity that we can keep going downtown. And I'm sure many of you have already been down there and you've seen some of the things. So here's some examples of what we've done. We have a life-size chest, and that's the human foosball in the background. That was super fun. We had a lot of people around downtown doing, participating in some events. These are the tables and chairs. They're actually, we purchased those for the deck, but it's taken a while to get the deck designed. So we dropped them in easy. And actually, as we were dropping them off, people started sitting on them, and now the booth are just loving them. They're thrilled. And every day we've had a lot of positive activity.
Counselor Taylor is so thrilled, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's pretty neat. We have a lot of fun. We also are, making some improvements along up there. We narrowed it down to 2 lanes to make that more pedestrian friendly through there, and put in some planters and stuff. So it's really traffic calming efforts. But it's the Saturday market operates right there, so we're trying to make it kind of fun and simple. And all these things are quick and pretty cheap, and we can get them out there quick, right away. And that's really what the effort's been about.
And the big part of it now is there was added crosswalk there.
Right.
Yeah. So it was great progress.
Yeah, that's great.
So some of the programming and activation that's happening now or coming, we have the deck that I mentioned in the park blocks. There's street performance programs moving forward where you'll see different performers that we're actually working with Hi-Fi on that program, so they're really bringing in some performers that have some great talent to help improve the environment downtown. We're having movies in the park block, Friday night concerts, and then there's the Now performance series. Keep Square, as I mentioned, the beer garden. We're working on some other ideas as far as shade and different things, and that's in concept still. There's some stories about it in the paper, but it's all, we're all working through it as a team. More performance programs, and we have Slow Motion Sundays, which are very popular as well.
What's the Slow Motion Sunday?
It's a cultural services event. I haven't participated in.
Okay.
There is a website that
Okay.
I'll talk about at the end so that I can hand out.
What's part of that, the chess?
It is, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of activation and that music and things, but I don't know specifically all. The library, a lot of activity there. Obviously, the piano's got a lot of positive feedback, and that's been pretty cool. We were joking the other day, we guys got some complaints because people were playing it late at night. We thought, well, that's bad because of something that we can work on that. And then the whole center, they had some programming from last year. They're continuing to do that this year, Party on the Flats End, and they also have lunch time. So it's really been a concerted effort to just program, activate, make downtown fun and inviting for everyone. And it'll continue to evolve the next couple months. We're excited about it. Looking forward, we're working with the Chamber on a joint marketing effort for downtown and really branding things and promoting it. We also have a member on our team that's helping us monitor and evaluate the success of the program, and so we have a lot of measures, and at the end of the season we're going to take a look and see what was successful and pressure washing was, we won't do it again, you know, and so that we're trying to be very nimble about that and evaluate the success of the end of the year, so we're excited about that. Obviously aligned with the recommendations we received from projects from public space, and then, you know, funding. We really want this is almost seed funding to get things going. We want to partner with businesses and get the seeds downtown so they see the success and they see how, you know, hey, student clerks came in here and it really made this a fun effort, and I want to participate in that. So we are constantly trying to make it happen, but everybody's helping out making it happen. We're super excited. And I tried to hurry, so that was about 10 times quicker than normal. So. And the website, hopefully I spelled it right. This is there. So, and I think I'll hand it off to Jeff and
just in the interest of keeping on time so we can get any of your questions at the end of this. So we're going to give a brief update about observations downtown and then open it up for questions.
So some of the things to partner with some of the programming that we did from an enforcement standpoint is that we reallocated the officers' time frame downtown between folks hundreds of hours between 6 and 8 night. And so we programmed the officers to be present in certain areas during certain hours of the day. So they have specific timelines where they engage. That's their job, to be engaged with the public and enforce laws at all times during specific areas where we receive complaints of feeling unsafe. So I've gotten a lot of public comments, both from the citizens, from businesses, from visitors, that the combined effort. So people feel, I used to hear a lot that, boy, it's dirty down here, and I don't feel safe. It stinks, and I don't feel safe. And so now I get a lot of, it's really nice down here. It's really pretty. It's clean. I am enjoying it down here. I do feel safer. On a daily basis, the officers here that they do and everyone that visits the area here at thank you, and yes, we do get thank yous from the travelers also. A combined effort, we not only increased the presence, we also increased the community outreach. I felt that it was important to look at the big picture. You know, was it really successful only to arrest people constantly over and over again? Was that really changing their behaviors? So adding the community outreach response to the outreach to social services. It was pretty apparent that establishing a rapport with travelers and people that are unhoused was that although they needed services, they really weren't getting services. And there were combinations of things that were impeding that from happening. One is that transportation and knowledge of what services were out there. And then if you get somebody that's in crisis, unemployment, that go to see a mental health specialist or a housing specialist for 2 weeks down the road, that's a failure in itself. So one of the things we do with the community outreach response team is that we work with the clients and we take them to those services that they need and guide them there, and then they begin to engage and they improve their life situation, and then so we've seen is that they their offenses they almost stop offending or they reduce it significantly. So if you want a number as far as the amount of clients that we're working with for the court program and the community outreach, we have about 83 clients that we're working with on and off on a weekly basis. Some clients, if they get the soft handoff and an improvement in life, then we don't have to have as much contact with them. Others, we have lots of contact with, and so we get them to the soft landing. One of the other things is that the service provider room in the community court on Fridays is another access to those services for them. So we really work in partnership with community court, the community court team. So we're really able to continue that work with those clients even on an extra day, and then adding another day. So we do community outreach on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we outreach on Tuesdays out to the parks. It's pretty interesting. The dynamics are different in the different areas of town. A lot of the people that tend to be in-house in the downtown area really engage, where we're seeing that it's much harder to establish that rapport and get people to engage with the parks. So it's taking longer to establish that rapport, but we're continuing the effort. So. And then obviously we have the dog ban that came into effect. And I guess I have to say that although it's very hard to enforce because you're having some very difficult conversations with people on some very emotional, it's a very emotional topic to have to talk to somebody about, and about their animals that they feel are part of their family. So, however, we've had almost entirely, probably I would say 95% compliance. We probably issued less than a dozen tickets since it went into effect. And by far, what was surprising to me is that I was concerned that the residents in the area were going to see it negatively, but it was the opposite. I'm actually hearing the residents in the area actually saying that for the first time that they actually feel like they can come downtown and walk their dogs and where they live. That they were never able to do that before because they felt scared that their dog was going to be attacked, that they were going to be attacked by other dogs that were being handled by responsible dog owners. So by far, the residents and the business owners and the employees that work down there we've heard a lot of positive comments about it. People are happy with it. Some of the biggest observations and comments I hear from the public are, it's cleaner down here, and I haven't stepped in about species one time, and I don't smell dogs when I go to have dinner or lunch, kind of thing. So those are the positive things that I hear about the dog ban. So, I mean, I just highlight I'm trying to be cognizant of your time. If anyone has questions and answers.
Anybody have questions? I'll start with you. So how is the distinction made between who works or lives downtown or who doesn't, who just might appear to live and work downtown, and when you're approached with getting them to the dog?
Anytime we see a dog downtown, we try to engage and make contact with them. And some of the questions are asked about the dog profession. And then once there's the education piece to it, then we ask them if they live or they live downtown, they live downtown, or whether their animals live downtown. So that conversation is had, and it's so if what we didn't want to do, in fact, I went to a lot of the residents because I was concerned they were going to be contacted like 10 times a day, every day, because they're trying to outlaw their dogs. So there was, we keep trying to bunch of ideas to make a list of people that live downtown, so then they can say, oh, they're on this list. And by far, I kind of put it out to the system and just said, what do you think? How would you like to do this? And so we kind of made it fun. I take a picture with them and their dog if they live downtown. And they put it in, so they have it on their phone so they can say, I reside downtown and when I started to live here, when Officer so-and-so has already talked to me about it. And that quelled people's fears about being on somebody's list. Even in one of the other options was maybe we could have special dog collars. Kind of thing, but really they didn't want the dog collars. They just didn't really want to be on any list or have to be tracked that way. So try to have conversations with everybody.
I was just wondering, since you're involved with the community court, how might I track how that's going? Is there a website? Is there reports or numbers, or how might I find out about that?
Well, because the program is a grant funded program partially. There are a lot, they're compiling the data, and they're going to be, I'm sure, publishing reports. And I mean, I can direct you to the court administrators in charge of that data, but Cheryl Stone would be a good contact to kind of get to the numbers.
Yeah, I would expect they will probably be reporting back to council at some point after the first year of the program, but still,
yeah, we're approaching a year anniversary in September.
And Judge Allen here, when they started the program, outlined everything that was going on. Other Tennessee about maybe getting there.
Thank you for your report and for your great work, all of you, the whole team. On the dog ban, I mean, obviously you're aware that, you know, that's a temporary program and council's going to be evaluating its success or failure or impact later in winter. And one thing I'd like you guys to be kind of thinking about as you prepare to, you know, report back to council about that is if you're able to discern any negative or positive impacts on things like the court program. So, you know, there might be some nexus between these efforts you're trying to do here and then policies that council is promoting here, and we would want to know if they were contributing or taking away from the work that's being done, you know, trying to get folks connected to social services or whatever it is. So not just, you know, do people complain or do people say it's great, but how is the dynamic affecting the other things that you're attempting to try to do downtown that are obviously positive things, and is that restriction having a positive or negative impact on those? Would be a question I would love to have some clarity around, if it's possible. It might not be possible, but that's a request.
Anecdotally, it hasn't impacted at all our court clients. And then most of the services that are there referred to are not within the boundary lane.
Right.
So I haven't, as far as the community outreach response clients, I'm not seeing any negative from that. And the clients that are coming in through community court are allowed to bring, as if you have service dogs, bring their dogs to community court. So it's not uncommon to have 3 or 4 dogs in there at a time, so I can open the court for more in the service program. Great, thank you.
I'm sorry, you were
Okay. So if I'm unhoused and I have a dog, what's that interaction like when I walk downtown?
There would be, same thing, try to engage, try to see if they know about the dog ban, and then we talk about what the dog ban is, and ask the questions usually about why is it about why do you have a dog ban kind of thing, and then depending on what the individual says why they have their dog with them, then we kind of move from there. So we don't do enforcement immediately on the first contact. It's a lot of it education and answering questions, and then we kind of problem solve with the person about what their needs are.
So if I don't have a fixed address, I mean, what if I'm sleeping downtown or in the park blocks or something like that? Does that qualify as living downtown?
No, it doesn't. And to tell you the truth, that camping downtown has really not been an issue, especially since this last fall we probably issued 9 camping tickets in October, I believe, and it was mainly under the awning in front of Benny Snowden's salon, the old semantic building there. So we do a lot of information, the officers down to do a lot of engagement and outreach and information. There's something that they contact. Some of the first things that we talk to people about, even if they come down with a dog or not, is about, are you unhoused? And do you know about the services that we have for you? So we do a lot of referrals and getting them information about what they can get for services and where they can get them.
So if I were in that scenario and I was trying to get from like 2nd all the way out to 18th and was walking down the limit, would I be allowed to transit through downtown with the dog? Okay.
A lot of that is that, in fact, they say, I was just trying to get over to, from here over to the side of town, which is, and, probably 95%, probably higher than that compliance.
But that's considered compliant if you're transiting through the area with the dog?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and once we educate the person about where the boundaries are and about what the rules are, and they just said, well, I just want to get to point A to B right now, so okay, we're going to do that. We allow that to happen. And in most cases, they don't deter us.
What if they were trying to go to a store or shop downtown because they don't have a place in which they can take the dog? How does that interaction typically play out?
Like they specifically want to go to a store downtown.
Right, like the bike to the subway, anything like that.
And their dog is in a service animal.
Correct.
I like to say the first contact is a lot of engagement and understanding, and they wanted to go to the store at that time period. I would allow them to go to the store and then ask them to proceed on after that. However, there's lots of stores that are, besides the bike market, there's an Aurora market, which is not in the boundary, as well as the market on the other side, on the land, on the other side of the building. So there are places that they can obtain the same services, not just in the bike market.
I want to thank Steve and Sergeant and coming to give us this information. My personal thanks to the downtown team and everybody that's involved in the efforts, and I'm hopeful to see some really great things happen. Thank you all. Thank you. Okay, the next thing we have is the chief's report, and you've got the black copy in your packet. So, Chief, you want to go through it or just take questions?
I'll be really quick. The Dale Lake policing report that you see in here is the one that you got last month. Our timing's a little bit off. The next one's not available until next week. Let me touch on just a few things. Introduced the department's values to new officers. I talked to all the employees about what the department's values are. And I have been attending the CRB monthly meeting, mostly to hear the case review. It's been informative for me. Been attending the Whitaker Community Council, and last month we talked about the crime trends and what our responsiveness has been to the things that we're seeing in Whitaker. And I was invited to be a speaker at the Opportunity Village open house. I think it's their second full year in operation. A number of newsworthy things that have happened, and then Safety Town is up and running, and that's just an amazing camp that we have going. Every year gets a little bit better. A lot of teen volunteers, and of course our volunteers in policing. I've got a 4J, or excuse me, I think it's a 4J teacher that's helping to run the programs.
Can I just ask real quick on the previous slide, the very last bullet there of the
that's a case that hadn't been resolved at the end of the month. So yeah, this is he was deceased. That's what we're and we are partway through the police captain's recruitment process. Christy Hammett, the Central Services Director, is running the Chief of Police recruitment process, and is going to be, is she scheduled to be here? So we'll go through that. Yeah, you'll probably want to add her to your agenda so you can hear all the parts that are involved in that. By the time we meet again, I'll be fully engaged in the community engagement portion. But it includes some involvement from the police department, and then it's going to be outreach to virtually every segment of the community that is interested in participating, and some that aren't aware that they're interested yet. All the departments, boards, and commissions can be involved, and
we're asking the committee what qualities and skills they want to see, ability they want to see in the next police chief, and then at the same time, the recruitment is underway for a consultant to do the headhunting, and then the hiring process will start in the winter, and city manager makes the final decision probably in the spring. And then internally, the Redshift is a company that the city is contracted with to go through the departments to do some appreciative inquiry processes. So those are already underway here. A lot of one-on-one interviews, and there will be a group exercise to envision the ideal department that our employees have, and some steps we can take to move towards that. It would be a nice gift for the next chief to see what the department envisions. And then our stocks data collection pilot program, the final 6 months, started this week. Is that right, Carter?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And these are the policy updates that have been published. Body-worn video training went really well. And from what I'm hearing, they're working well. And that's it. And then the DLP report is the same as last month's, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about it if you have questions. Safety Town is a camp that we adopted quite a few years ago. 2-week camp for preschoolers, so it kind of gets them ready for being away from mom and dad during the day, so when they start preschool. And there's 30 different safety subjects, like firearms safety, how to stay away or how to report a gun when they see one, or tell mom and dad. There's a lot of traffic safety, so we're creating some backseat drivers for everybody. It includes, tricycle and bicycle stuff. One of the reasons it's called Safety Town is that there's this map that covers the gym floor with city streets and buildings and stop signs and lights and the little 3-wheel carts that they pedal around and learn all the traffic rules. And anyway, 30 subjects like that. Dangerous items around the house. So we're creating a whole bunch of little consultants for every family to how to be safe. Yeah, they have a lot of fun, and I think our employees, the officers and the CSOs that are involved and crime prevention specialists and volunteers really enjoy it. It's a ton of work. It goes well though. And then it's funded almost entirely by donations. Yes, walk away. The process sounds like you're going to be over your hours by the end of the winter. They finally get around to getting to the process. Oh, no, I'm monitoring it pretty closely. Moving right on along, back on the schedule, like we're going to go to the code of conduct. Here, welcome. Thank you for returning.
First day of the
Oh, you just got it. Oh, we're doing it. It indicates permanence in the position. Yeah.
There's nothing permanent to see.
Oh, sounds like a monarch.
All right. So we've got kind of a short window for the code of conduct. We're kind of down to most of it was fairly minor adjustments and modifications, and then if the council finds that it would be, or commission finds that it would be appropriate, it would be action on it. So with that being said, we'll start on it.
So the first page didn't have any corrections or notes from last time. I will just assume rather than asking at every page that if somebody has something, they'll jump in between as I kind of go through here. So that brings us down to the titling for 10.01.4 and 10.01.5, and we went round and round last meeting about how to make that work in a way that was smooth and made sense. What we came up with was changing 10.01.4 from professional standards to department expectations, and then 10.01.5 to professional standards. And
I have one thought about that. The sentence below says employees must adhere to the standards at all times. Now we have expectations in the title, but only standards in 1.1.5. So I would suggest that we just change that sentence and tie it in together. That employees must adhere to the following expectations and standards at all times. That way you lose any argument that, well, what is that referring to? Just the standards below it is all together.
I don't have any concern or objection to that at all. Any good thoughts on it?
Seems like a good idea.
Any thoughts on those two titles? Does that seem like it fits the order we're trying to do? So that was that's the only notes I have on that thing. So we'll move right along. The next section was 10.01.5.2, use of position authority. There's a question, the discussion made about to obtain personal financial gain or advantage for self or others. Debate kind of, or not really debate, conversation wound around, and there wasn't ever any official suggestion made about how to correct that. The main concern is, what about the circumstance where the officer's doing something for someone, like Officer Trotter, who was commended recently for helping a veteran downtown. And obviously, this is not in the spirit of the spirit of what he did is not what this is trying to capture. And so there's some level of intent there that makes it different. There wasn't any real suggestion on when to change that to, so I left it as it was. I think that maybe people would have a chance to think it over, or maybe it doesn't need to change because we know what the intent is.
Well, you could do something like right at the beginning of where it says employees must, unless you could say something like, unless otherwise approved by the chief or his or designee, employees must not use their or must use their position. No, wait a minute. It says must use their position. Okay. I was trying to make it like, yeah, maybe right in front of the they then, the second sentence. Unless otherwise approved by the chief or his or her designee, may not use or attempt to use credentials or a badge. We can do something like that. Because we don't want, I don't think that anybody here wants to prohibit doing good. We're not a self-interest kind of conflict or self-interest gain. Fine. Oh, clearly, sorry.
So I know you all have looked at this more than I've been able to, but just my quick hit on that is, I think no one could interpret helping someone who doesn't have a pair of shoes get a pair of shoes as obtaining personal or financial gain or advantage. I think that'd be really a hard stretch, and though I appreciate you trying to come up with a solution to make it explicit, I think that would then require that officer calling up their supervisor and saying, hey, can I help out this homeless person? I think we've got a whole IA report. I think there's a lot of layers of protection for an officer to be able to turn to their supervisor and say, hey, I was just doing a good deed for somebody, and they could look at the facts and come up with the same conclusion, unless you feel like there's some concern for rank and file officers about this language being misinterpreted in such a circumstance as Officer Trotter
everything you're here to see.
I know, I'm just trying to find someone.
I understand.
So I got Edward, then myself.
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Sarah. Unless an officer walked into a shoe store and says, "This is my badge as an official officer of the Eugene Police Department. I am requesting a pair of shoes in size 9. Thank you." It seems to me like we'd be able to have a fairly judicious sense of what this officer's intent was in compliance with the policy.
Well, trying to think through this, I think just one sentence at the end, because this section shall not be used to apply the word charitable, or giving to individuals. I mean, that in some way, in those words, separating that from the previous section, because the previous section is relevant to all other privileges and benefits that somebody might use their authority to get, whereas adding a sentence at the end that clarifies that this section does not apply to persons who's trying to assist people with charitable issues or for charitable purposes. And that way it doesn't look like the person gaining financially from it or getting, like you said, free goods or free without being in need.
Okay. Sorry, not to be disagreeable, but I think that opens the door to use your position to benefit a charity, and I don't think that that's the intention either. So,
well, not the charity. I said for charitable purposes, individuals, you can word it how individuals are charitable.
I just feel like we might be letting the perfectly the individual.
I mean, that's what we did in the strategies. In fact, he was able to obtain meals at neighbors' restaurants, so he's getting meals and benefits, and like you said, it is something that somebody in the community might object to and say, why is he getting benefits? There are people like that do that. And, why is this person different from that person who doesn't get those benefits? Now, the officer, when he's off the restaurant owner, maybe he's feeling like he's in trouble. I'm just saying, there's got to be some kind of way, some wiggle room in there to allow good deeds to not be judged as a violation of the section. That's all I'm saying. Generally.
Yeah, I would also worry about businesses feeling a little bit of pressure to accommodate an officer over just a normal person who comes in. I mean, while giving them the ability to help when they feel like, when they want to.
Yeah, we don't want an officer going in and pressuring in order to try to do a charitable cause. But and that is what we don't want that. But if an officer goes in and says, hey, I'm trying to help this person out, is there something that you can do to help me as I'm trying to put these pieces together? Or, hey, I'm coming in, I'm going to go buy these glasses for the person, and then they want to offer up a donation. Or to even ask if there's going to be a sale or whatever, to explain the circumstances. To me, it depends on how the process is done, and we don't want officers using their position in order to try to explicitly obtain a benefit. But if somebody hears the story and wants to offer it, I mean, you could say that the badge is influencing that experience. But that's everywhere we go, that happens. We influence everything around us. So there's a piece of me that I see both sides of it, and I go back to just feeling like simple is better, and leaving it as it is, and then letting the system sort it out. If there's ever a question or concern, that we let the system sort it out at that point. And it's one that we definitely had a lot of discussions about. And I have all the note pages, so when it comes to senior staff and then the union review, that I'm going to go through and compile all the comments for at least the main section so that they can be visible. So like this one, I'll have a list of things that have been discussed and suggestions. So unless the commission wants to come up with something to make a motion, to move that forward in one direction or the other officially. So
That's Steve and then myself.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with Councilor Smith and what Edward has said, and I think there are other areas of the conduct policy that can address kind of like abuse in that way. I hardly envision an officer being disciplined for helping somebody out with shoes or something like that. So I'm prepared. I guess I would move that we just accept the language as is.
We have a motion and a second. Second by Edward. move us to accept the language as it is.
In that section?
Yes. In that section. Then we have a discussion and some you know, the word is the devil's in the details, and you know that's always where the rub is, because my feeling is that what one man happens to think, one person happens to think is charitable, another person might think is an overuse of a person's authority and badge of office and their ability to obtain services for free for someone else. And whether or not because the person's a veteran and served his country and everybody feels that's a good thing, but suppose something else happens to someone who maybe hasn't got that stature in the community and somebody objects to it, and then the next thing you know, an officer's called in. The officers need to be clear on what they can and can't do, and where their line, their bright line is that they can't cross. So I don't know how you're going to do that with a generalized section like this. My feeling is that when the action happens, you'll make a decision on whether or not it was okay or not. And that's just not a way to have policy. It should be clear. And you can't, you know, get in somebody's shoes, obviously that's not, but going to a restaurateur and asking them, you know, could you help this guy out with some meals? And him feeling the pressure of, well, this officer works downtown, I have to, you know, or I have a crime or something, you know, I may have. And certain populations, certain demographics also have more fear of officers than others. Maybe they're more wanting to help out because they fear officers in a different way. I don't know. It's going to be difficult to try to just leave it like it is, but the motion's on the table.
Well, I appreciate you thinking in those terms, and because you're right in terms of devils in the details. I guess for me, in this circumstances, I would defer. So you say this will go back to union leadership to have another look at this policy. Is that right? So I guess I would encourage you maybe to point out this conversation that we had here at the Police Commission and give an opportunity for those representative folks to think if they can think of a reason to object to this language, or do they worry that it might put someone who's actually sincerely trying to do a good deed in some kind of discipline jeopardy? Because I think they would be the most likely to have that perspective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we use the term reasonableness constantly in policy, and I mean, in my opinion, unless it's clear that an officer was trying to gain some sort of advantage for themselves personally that isn't an act of, you know, helping somebody else out. I mean, we, as a union rep, we would fight that all day. I mean, we can review and see what you think, but I mean, and that's something to consider is using that terminology, which really doesn't help out a whole lot, maybe, because it's, I mean, it comes up too. Like, well, what is reasonableness? But I think in this use of hopefully helping people, it would be the first we can cross, but you never know.
Anybody else want a motion? Okay, we'll call for the question then. All, you want to restate your motion? It's just
the motion was just to leave the language as presented, as it's in 101.52 A and B.
Okay, everybody understand that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, abstention? Are you still there? No. Yeah. I did go back. Okay. We'll keep going.
All right. So 152E. Looks like it didn't note on my sheet, but it didn't here. When they're credentialed, I can't make sure that is really. Yeah, so I was wondering if your, and I didn't get that changed on your. So I'm going to here. Hopefully I'll do that one. the next go around. 10152 would be, the second half of that was struck out as was the motion by the commission. And then there were no changes made in 10053. That's that highlighted section that's been left in again for the ongoing discussion. And there is.
So on the 101, sorry.
Yeah.
For the 10153, your note there says it left this in for now for senior staff discussion. So like if we were going to get to an action tonight, it would be like subject to further revision after that discussion, or is that discussion we had?
Well, there hasn't. No, that's the chief and the captains, and the commission didn't have a direct motion or direction on where to take that. The chief was actually the one who made the suggestion that it could be removed because it's against the law. And so there's other things that cover that. But there's maybe some other discussion also that there's a fair amount in here could be illegal, and that it may be beneficial to have it in here so that we have a clear policy violation as well as a legal violation. So there wasn't any commission action. There was just been discussion. And this is a note that I put on probably 2 or 3 meetings ago, and it just remains so that it should continue to be flagged for me so that we can have that discussion at the next meeting.
So then I guess just to follow up on that, so if we were approved as presented, then if senior staff had a discussion they wanted to change, then I assume they would just come back to us for would not.
No, the commissioner's charter. We make recommendations to the chief of police and the staff as to what changes or policy suggestions we have. They have their final arbiter and they make their decisions about what it's going to be.
Yeah, well, I guess
I just are providing input at this point. We don't get to review what the chief decides and decide whether we want to change it again.
Well, I wasn't asking about changing again, but whether we would see a final version that shows any changes.
So yeah, once it's policy, it's policy. So it's put in this plan, it's online, and we can look at it.
Yeah, we can include it in the packet once it is.
That's really my question.
Okay.
Just be more clear.
All right.
I would love to see this policy in our packet yet again.
Well, you'll have it at least one more time because regardless of what happens tonight, you'll get another copy of the final of what you guys have. If you make a motion to move it along, to approve it as it is, with like a couple of changes we've made. We'll still put a copy in the next packet so that you can see the final version of what you've approved. So you'll see it at least one more time. Yeah, which granted. 10154. A, that adhere to misdemeanor suggested to changes to comply with all misdemeanor, and then statutes instead of statutes. There's just a couple minor little things. D changed will be required to justify to may be required to explain. So those are the only fairly minor adjustments on that page. From there, we get to the next page. If there's any new observations, and that takes us to 1005-9 conduct. Section E, where we added and or significantly impairs the operation. So the word switch. And then in F, we changed reasonably suspected to physical. Again, pretty minor. Moving along. 101-513, all sworn police officers, when asked, must identify themselves. So we added that language in there. 101-514A was changed from employees to officers. and that section really is specific to officers, not records personnel or everybody. Endorsement of product. There's a lot of discussion. I've got a lot of notes on that. And in the end, nothing official came out, and the general feeling that I got was that if you just read it without reading too much into it, it's pretty clear that an endorsement is an act. It's not a passive thing. And so really just leaving it as is is probably fine, and so it reflects that. And 1516, Terry helped me with a little grammar on where to put my twos. I got that swapped around. And that's it for that page there. And letter C at the top of the next page, whichever section that is. 11516. A little changing that too again. We're smooth out wording, not changing, not really changing anything other than just smooth out some wording. And that might just take us to the end.
Closing comments from the commissioners. Oh, I'm sorry, Claudia.
Can I make a motion to accept the policy?
All right. Hold on, Steve. Hang on just a second. We have a motion, recognizing there's a motion to accept the policy.
As
presented.
amended.
I'll second the motion, now we can have discussion. Steve, go ahead.
You want to sign them?
As amended is what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else on discussion? Anybody else on discussion? Okay. All those in favor, signify by raising your hand. Carter's can't hear everybody. All opposed, raise your hand. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for the time. This has been a tough one. It's been spent a lot of time on this and give a lot of input. So I think there's a lot for food for thought as well as the union and the staff. On to commissioner comments. Anybody have any? Steve.
I would say I really appreciate the work. It's come a long way. It's good. So, nice job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a fun process. It's really, this has probably been the first one. Well, it absolutely has been the first one to really dig in. And while I'll admit I came to the first meeting a little apprehensive about how this might go. It actually has been enjoyable to really look at the wordsmithing and the meanings of words and how we really drilled into something probably way too far. But then we're able to kind of back out and really know that we're meaningful in what is put on the paper. And so it really has been an interesting process. So, yeah. It'd be nice if we could do fewer, but have more that are more meaningful like this. Yeah. And feel like we really are legitimately making a difference and making things better, because that certainly is what has happened here. That's been
good.
So I just wanted to say, with the appointment of Jennifer and the chief announcing his retirement, sometimes the question of the relevancy of this commission comes up, and our relatively new mayor asked me that question. And I think work like this and the work on the body-worn camera and the chief, getting that into the queue and before this body in a timely way, that once you were ready to roll out that equipment, you had vetted the policy with this body as well as everyone else you needed to run it past, really demonstrated the value of this commission, and I told the mayor that. So you know, sometimes you can feel like you're working in the dark and no one's paying any attention, but actually I think this commission has done some really good work, in particular in the last few years, and it's been a real asset to the community, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, that's one thing I want to add, and that's earlier Mark just made a comment about, you know, the pursuit policy, and this is something that I understand totally where it's coming from, and I've seen tragedies result from officers involved. But I also saw in here somewhere, and I wanted to find it, there was a allegation of officer in a pursuit of a vehicle where the person was DUI, and he was, the complaint sustained for internal investigation of an officer engaged in pursuit of a potential DUI suspect, the vehicle and policy of our pursuit policy, and that was sustained by everyone, and I guess he was disciplined. My fear is the exact opposite of that, is that if that person went on to hit a family and people and children, what would the headline be the next morning if that officer failed to take action against the DUI, obvious DUI suspect that he saw, but the guy wouldn't stop, so he had to break off the pursuit and continue, and he was on to kill someone. So there are consequences with every policy we work on. And this is not the argument for discussion, time for discussion just now, I realize that, but somebody has to really think about everything that's involved, and it's easy to say, well, we're just not going to pursue this. It's a lot of fun. And really, it's not just that easy. I think it's pretty complicated. So thank you all for coming. Would
you mind if I respond to that? I didn't mean this as a first. No, I'm not taking it personally. You should know that it's not an easy decision to establish a policy that forbids pursuits. And when we went this way, we referenced the study that there's no great studies out there that can answer that question. But there was a survey of police officers asking what happens when you stop pursuing, and what the answer consistently was the person stops running. So one could conclude is that that person is a lot more dangerous while they're being pushed by a police officer. I have great confidence in the officer's driving skills and decision making. I have no confidence in the decision making and driving skills of a drunk or someone who's high on methamphetamine or heroin or what have you. So the issue that you raised is exactly one of those that we had to take into consideration. And what we found is that we have fewer crashes. And presumably, if we multiplied our experience by 1 million, we'd find that fewer people died because of the policy that we have. So it's not a decision I take lightly, but it is. I established this policy for one reason, that's to save lives. And I believe that it's having a lot of that effect.
I believe it. Question that at all. Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. We have a month off, and please do enjoy the rest of the summer.
We don't want to read it again.
No. I asked him how many times I could look at this, and he's like, 4 or 5.
Yeah, okay. You should look at it.